In 1934, a little girl in Kansas wore a dress to church that her mother had sewn from an empty flour sack, and the other girls in the pew were wearing dresses made from flour sacks too, and not one of them said a word about it, because almost every dress in the room had begun its life holding 40 pounds of flour. By the time this is over, you will understand a whole way of living that has nearly vanished. Number 8 on this list is the reason flour companies started printing flowers and birds on their sacks. Number 5 is the trick that made a worn-out coat last another 5 winters. And number 2 is the one habit that, if you brought it back today, would quietly save you more money than almost anything else you could do. These were the years when a family bought almost nothing new and made what they had go further than seems possible now. This is how they did it. They didn't have much, but they knew how to make it last. Number 8, the flour sack dress. Cloth cost money, and money was the one thing a Depression family did not have. So the cotton sacks that flour and feed came in became the cloth of the household. They were washed, bleached of their printing, and cut into dresses, shirts, aprons, underclothes, and curtains. The companies that sold the flour noticed what women were doing, and in the middle of the 1930s, they began printing their sacks in cheerful flowered patterns on purpose, so a mother could choose the print she wanted, and a family could pick its next flower by the dress it would become. 3 matching sacks made a dress. A girl of the 1930s might wear flour her whole childhood and never once think it strange. Number 7, mend it, turn it, pass it down. No piece of clothing was worn until it fell apart and then thrown away. It was mended at the first hole and mended again. And when the collar or the cuffs of a shirt wore through, a clever mother would turn the worn fabric to the inside and the good side out, and the shirt looked nearly new again. Clothes were handed from the oldest child down to the youngest, altered to fit each one in turn, until the last child wore a garment that had dressed 3 children before. When at last it could not be worn at all, it was not thrown away. It became rags, or quilt pieces, or a braided rug. Cloth had a long life in those houses, far longer than we give it now. Number 6, cardboard in the shoes. Shoes were expensive and children's feet would not stop growing, so a pair of shoes was made to last well past the point we would throw them out. When the soles wore through to a hole, a piece of cardboard was cut to the shape of the foot and slipped inside, and the shoe was worn another month, and then another, with fresh cardboard whenever the old gave out. In the wet, the cardboard turned to mush by the end of the day, and a child walked home on the bare, worn leather, and the next morning, there was new cardboard in the shoe. It was not comfortable, and it was not warm, but it kept a child shod, and a shod child could go to school. Here is what stood behind all of this saving. By the early 1930s, a quarter of the country was out of work, and for those who still had jobs, wages had been cut again and again. A family might be living on a third of what it had earned a few years before, with no certainty that even that would last the month. In that world, every coin was spoken for before it was earned, and a single unexpected cost, a worn-out pair of shoes, a torn coat, a broken tool, could throw a careful budget into ruin. People did not save string and patch their clothes because it was a charming way to live. They did it because there was no margin underneath them at all, and they knew it. Now answer this before you hear the rest. If your income were cut to a third of what it is, starting next month, and stayed there for years, how much of what you throw away this week could you actually find a second use for? Write your honest answer in the comments right now before you hear the rest of the list. Then keep watching, because a few of these habits are coming back to American homes already, and not by choice. Number 5. The patch, the darn, and the unraveled sweater. A hole in a sock was not a reason to buy socks. It was darned, woven shut with a needle and thread across the gap until the sock was whole again, and a child of the Depression learned to darn before learning many other things. A coat worn thin at the elbows got a patch, often cut from another garment too far gone to wear, and a sweater that could no longer be saved was unraveled back into yarn, the crinkled wool washed straight and wound into a ball and knitted up again into mittens or socks or a smaller sweater for a smaller child. Nothing made of cloth or wool ever reached the end of its life in a single form. It simply became the next thing. Number 4. Soap, string, and the saved up scraps. The small things were saved as carefully as the large ones. Bits of string were wound into a ball that grew over the years. Brown paper and the good parts of envelopes were smoothed flat and kept. The last slivers of worn-down soap were pressed together into a new bar so that not even the soap was wasted. And in many homes, soap itself was made at the kitchen stove from saved fat and lye, a careful and sometimes dangerous job that turned the household's own grease back into something useful. Jars, tins, bottles, and boxes all had a second life as storage. A Depression kitchen drawer held a small fortune of saved odds and ends, every one of them kept because someday it would be needed. Let me tell you about one of those mothers. In a town in Nebraska in 1933, a woman sat up most nights after her children were asleep, turning the household's worn clothes into the next season's wardrobe by the light of a single lamp. She unpicked her husband's ruined work trousers and cut them down into school pants for her son. She made her daughter's dress from the better half of her own old one. She darned, she patched, she let down hems, and took them up again as the children grew. She was not doing a craft. She was clothing 4 children on a budget that should not have been able to clothe one, and she did it with her hands, night after night, for years, and her children went to school looking cared for because of work no one ever saw her do. That invisible labor was the real engine of the Depression household. Number 3. Fixed, never replaced. When something broke, the first thought was never to buy another. It was to fix the one you had. A cracked handle was bound with wire or wound with twine. A leaking pot was mended with a small bolt and 2 washers. Furniture was repaired and repaired again, and a chair that had been in the family 20 years might be on its 3rd set of mended legs. Men kept a box of saved screws, nails, hinges, and odd bits of metal, pulled from anything thrown out, because the right piece to fix the next broken thing was often already in the box. Buying new was the last resort, not the first, and most things never reached it. Number 2, use it up, wear it out, make it do. Behind every single habit on this list was one quiet rule, passed from mother to daughter and father to son, that ran the whole Depression home. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. It meant that nothing was bought that was not needed. Nothing was thrown away that still had any use left in it. And the question asked of every object was not, is this still nice, but is there any life left in this at all? It is the single habit that, brought back into a modern house, would change more than any coupon or sale, because it changes not what you buy, but how you see everything you already own. Number 1, they saw worth in everything. Underneath all of it was a way of seeing that we have very nearly lost. To a family in the Depression, almost nothing was truly garbage, because almost everything held some use that had not yet been spent. A worn dress was cloth. A cloth was a rag. A rag was a rug. The end of one thing was simply the beginning of another, and a person raised in those years could look at a full waste bin today and feel something close to pain at the waste of it. That way of seeing was not a virtue they chose for its own sake. It was carved into them by years when waste of any kind was a luxury no one could afford, and it stayed with most of them for the rest of their lives. So, what did you answer at the start? Look again at what you throw out this week, and you will see it differently now. A dress made of flour sacks and a coat turned inside out, cardboard in the shoes, and a sweater unraveled back into yarn. A box of saved screws and a single rule: use it up, wear it out, make it do. None of it was charming to the people who lived it, and none of them looked back on going without as the good old days. It was the discipline of families with no margin at all, doing the unseen work of making a little go a very long way. They were the hard years. They didn't have much, but they knew how to make it last, and that's worth remembering. If your parents or grandparents lived through the Depression, tell me in the comments the one thing they never, ever threw away. I want to know which of these habits your family kept. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week we go back inside the hardest years America ever faced and the forgotten skills the people who survived them knew.